Hello everyone, I'm Badley Jonathan and this is the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe television live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. In our top stories in this edition of the news, 2 fishermen have been kidnapped in Banguren in the Noon Division, West region of the Republic of Cameroon. They were picked up by unidentified gunmen earlier today. The gunmen stormed the locality and 2 of them were killed. In the meantime, several inhabitants of Banguren continue fleeing the area to neighboring villages for safety, and the Minister of Territorial Administration ASSANGA Paul has called on the attackers to drop their weapons and surrender or face the heavy arm of the military. And out of the country, the presidential election in the Democratic Republic of Congo is being postponed in 3 areas, and electoral officials in the country say the postponement has been triggered by insecurity and an Ebola outbreak. Those were top stories. The Minister of Territorial Administration of the Republic of Cameroon, ASSANGA Paul, has called on the attackers who stormed the locality of Banguren in the Noon Division, West region of the Republic of Cameroon last weekend and killed 1 person and equally set ablaze close to 100 houses to drop their guns and surrender or face the heavy arm of the country's military force. And he was speaking during a visit to that locality after the attack, and several persons have continued fleeing the area after the attack as a result of the growing insecurity in the area. They are now seeking refuge in neighboring villages. Manjikan Gabriel reports.
The
cry of agony from one of the inhabitants of Banguren village in the west region of Cameroon. She is just one amongst many of the inhabitants of Banguren village who are now fleeing away from their homeland after it went under attack last weekend. The incident that saw several homes and private properties destroyed didn't pass unnoticed in the eyes of the country's top authorities. Territorial Administration Minister Paul Atanganje was in Banguren village to comfort the victims. The destruction is enormous. It is horrible what we are seeing, but the head of state asked me to reassure the population that the terrorists will be tracked until they are arrested. Meanwhile, security reinforcements will be sent to the division and the subdivision of Banguren. The Banguren Council Hall was where the victims received government support in the form of mattresses, zincs, just to name a few. The alleged separatists were served this message by Paul Atanganje. They are obliged to drop their arms and return to the country under the banner of the Disarmament, Demobilization and Reintegration Committee that was formed by the head of state, without which they will welcome the wrath of the armed forces. While hoping that things return to normal in Banguren village, the fear of the unknown looms in the air.
Earlier today, the attackers alleged to be pro-independence fighters from the crisis-stricken northwest region of the country returned to the locality of Banguren in the Noon Division, West region of the country, and kidnapped 2 fishermen. 2 of the kidnappers were killed during this other attack earlier today. And in the report coming up next, we're going to show you just what happened in the locality of Banguren last weekend. 1 person killed, close to 100 houses set ablaze in Banguren in the Noon Division, West region of Cameroon. A lifetime shock suffered by the over 4,000 inhabitants of the village.
They first of all shot a gun outside. When I was about getting up, I heard them coming towards the door. I just get up now with all my children. Then they asked me to come and show my father. I went in with them. Then they came and took my father, went with him outside, take the fuel, spray on the house and burn everything.
De 1h à la nuit, j'ai entendu le mot de fusil. Je me suis levé. J'ai ouvert la porte.
Imam Issa says he heard gunshots at about 1 a.m. The attackers broke into his house, collected his mobile phone, and asked him, his wives and children to step out before putting the house on fire.
Ici, avant de brûler la maison.
They also set ablaze vehicles.
La nuit, les gens m'ont toqué la porte jusqu'à appeler même mon nom. Je suis obligé de me lever au lit. J'ouvre maintenant la porte. Les gars me demandent la clé du véhicule. Ils ont maintenant amené les bidons d'essence, brûlé la voiture.
Zakarian Joko is on his knees, so to speak, after the vehicle he was using for public transport to feed himself and his family was reduced to ashes.
Dans ma vie, là où se trouve la voiture, là, ma vie est foutue.
My father lost all his documents, all our birth certificate. In fact, many things have been burned all because all our report. Then my junior report cards, birth certificate was all with my father. So they have burned all. Nothing is left.
The attackers, alleged to be separatist fighters from the northwest region, took some inhabitants of Banguren hostage at their departure.
Les 2 heures que les gens là nous ont surpris et tout le monde était endormi. Bon, ils ont pris les papas, les mamans, les enfants.
Fifen Husseini says they took away fathers, mothers and children.
C'est d'autres choses, ils partaient aussi avec, ils brûlent tout. Ils entrent maison par maison, maison par maison. Donc si quelqu'un vous dit qu'il a vu quand même le visage de quelqu'un, c'est que vraiment, c'est que celui-là.
On nous a pris, on nous a laissé jusqu'à la frontière à Bangoula. On marchait à pied en courant avec les enfants en main.
Imam Issa, his wives and 3 children were taken away and later released at the border between Banguren and Bangulan.
Là, nous nous dit qu'ils vont encore revenir. Voilà pourquoi les enfants tout.
He adds that they promised to return, and this is why several inhabitants of Banguren have fled the village to neighboring villages. This is the 3rd attack on that part of the west region of Cameroun. And the crisis hitting the northwest region and the southwest region of the Republic of Cameroun is continuously spilling into other parts of the country, notably the west and the littoral regions of the country. And this is because of the proximity of these 2 regions to the crisis hit parts of the country. And beside the recurrent attacks orchestrated by suspected separatist fighters from the crisis-stricken parts of the country, in some parts of the west region, in places like Fongo Tongo and Banguren, there is equally a humanitarian crisis with the continuous influx of persons who are fleeing violence in the crisis-stricken regions into some parts of the Mongo division in the littoral region, as well as some parts of the west region of the country. And the crisis has continued deepening, seriously affecting the educational sector in those 2 parts of the country. And of course, the educational sector is one of the hardest hit areas of national life as far as the crisis is concerned. Derek Jato reports from Boya.
As undergraduate 2 years ago, they witnessed the graduation of the Anglophone crisis from a peaceful protest into an armed conflict. And they were still there when the land was nicknamed Ground Zero because of the escalation of violence.
They had all reason not to graduate. If they had to follow the current mindset, they will say, okay, there's crisis, there are problems.
And for the sake of their future, These students from the Catholic University Institute of Boya, CUIB, graduating today, kept their lives on the line. And one voice was constantly reminding them to see their stumbling blocks as stepping stones.
God allows negativity for purpose, because He uses it to bring Islam to the future.
At the graduation ceremony, Reverend Father George Keze Jingwa, president of CUIB, gave reasons why he named this 2018 badge as the Ground Zero badge.
This is what I'm saying today, and that's what we say to our graduates. That's what we call Ground Zero restructuring, rethinking. Means that you decide to say to yourself, what is happening? The world is changing, what should we do? Then we say, we disrupt ourselves. You disrupt means you change yourself and say, hey, if I don't change myself, the environment will not change.
The University of Saints and Scholars is also praying for the tenacity of these graduates as they move into the society that is increasingly desperate.
That is the situation as far as academic activities is concerned in the southwest, and it is practically the same thing in the northwest region of the country as the Anglophone crisis deepens further, and militants of the Cameroun Renaissance Movement, CRM political party, are crying foul. They are decrying what they consider as a maneuver by authorities to maintain the national president, Professor Maurice Kamto, who was candidate at the last presidential election in the country. To maintain his passport, he has filed for the renewal of his passport for the past 2 months, and until now the passports have not been renewed, and we are receiving an official of that party. You're welcome to join us on this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime news on Equinoxe Television. Silvanus Tifu, what is the problem?
Babala, it's practically ridiculous for a country that is said to have embraced democracy with all its full concentration and determination, and we find the legend of the 2018 presidential election, the man purportedly called as the penalty shooter, the one that scored the goal, being held hostage under house arrest, and without any official document that has been signed so far to restrict him from having movement. It's known in law as de facto. After he had his official outing last October at Addis Ababa, that's the headquarters of the African Union, which he went there to
plead for the cancellation of the election.
No, for the recounting. That's recounting of the votes that he said he won, and the CRM stands firmly and strongly in support of it. He went to Addis Ababa using the international diplomatic passport because his wife is a diplomat, and according to the Cameroonian law, once your wife is a diplomat, you also benefit that privilege to have a diplomatic passport. And his
passports have expired.
His diplomatic passport has expired, and as well as his ordinary passport, and he has so far tendered an application for it to be renewed at the Ministry of National Surety.
And 2 months have elapsed since he tendered the application.
2 months have elapsed, and there is no response, and nobody is saying anything. I want to tell you that it's a Machiavellian means of holding him hostage, denying his right of movement, going out of the country, especially with regards to the fact that they know his outings, especially to...
has he sought to know why? Has he gone to the authorities in charge of this to know why he has not received the response up to now?
As a law-abiding citizen, I think he has sought all reasonable avenues to answer to such reason of his passport being withheld, the non-renewal of his passport, and there isn't any tangible answer to it. Everybody seems to be dormant, and I want to tell you that it's just a kind of a way to restrict our candidate from moving out of the country. it's unheard of, and we of the Cameroon Renaissance movement, we think that is something which is not very right for our country's democracy. It's something which is like a clear indication to show that the system in place didn't win, because when you win an election, I don't think you have to hold your main challenger from taking moves which are worth taking, such as going out to meet international diplomats, because we of the Cameroon Renaissance movement, if you look at the manifestos of our party, that's our party slogan. I mean, it says changing the future through peaceful and transparent elections.
Silvanus Tifu, what are you asking for now?
We are asking for the delegate in charge of national surety to renew our candidates' ordinary and diplomatic passport, which is quite a legitimate claim, because there isn't any criminal record that has been set up against him. So using the de facto, denying him the right to have a passport, which is an indication of the fact that they want to restrict his movement, is quite criminal, and which is something we don't seem to buy.
Silvanus Tifu, thanks for coming. I believe your message has gone through. On to something else now. Several parts of Cameroon's economic capital, Douala, have been in darkness for several days, and this follows an explosion that damaged some underground electricity supply cables of the electricity production and distribution company Eneo at the level of Kilometer Sing in the Douala 2 subdivision, and authorities have been stepping up efforts to solve this problem. In those images, you can see the Minister of Energy and Water Resources, Gaston Elundu Esomba, who has been in the economic capital of the country throughout the day, ensuring that this problem is solved. He and other officials were in the area where the explosion occurred, and rehabilitation works are going on. Meantime, the electricity production and distribution company Eneo has already devised some supplementary strategies to make sure that some of the neighborhoods that were affected have energy supply. Around 80% of the affected households have already received electrical energy as of now through secondary and even secondary lines that have been put in place, and other connections that have been done by the technicians who are on the ground, ensuring that this problem is solved as soon as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, we are receiving our second guest in this newscast. He is from the diaspora. He is a member of the civil society, an activist, and of course a political observer. ASSANGA. Paddy, you're welcome.
Thank you, Babila, for having me.
You came to Cameroon to attend the Anglophone General Conference.
Yes, sir. Actually, as you know, I am a political and civil rights activist based in the diaspora, and we have been advocating for a peaceful solution for the Cameroon Anglophone, for the Anglophone crisis. So when that conference was convened, we took upon ourselves to brave that fear to come and be arrested by Mr. Biya's government, which is bent on intimidating our people, harassing our people, and creating that atmosphere of fear within those of us who are based in the diaspora. So,
however, the meeting was postponed. And how did you receive the news that it was postponed?
Well,
what's your take on the postponement?
I got the news that that meeting was postponed, that the conference was postponed, because I was in direct communications with Monzo, Eddie Smith, your colleague, and the Cardinal. But since I had already planned to come to Cameroon and attend that conference, I did not want to stay back home. I said, okay, let me go home and see what is happening on the ground, because
and you've been in the you've been in the crisis-stricken parts of this country. What did you see?
Of course, I've been in. I traveled from Boya through Ekona, Ekiliwindi, Etiki, Manfe, Kumba, Bali, Widikum, and then to Bamenda. I did that journey 3 times because I've been here for 6 weeks. So the truth is this, and I will be very, very honest and frank. There are people in this country who don't want this thing to resolve, just like there are people abroad who don't want this thing to be resolved because they are making huge sums of money out of it.
Now, what did you see, first of all? You went through several parts of these two regions.
I saw, when I got to Econa, I saw a devastated community. I saw an isolated or an abandoned community. Nobody was living there. There were cars are burned cars are all over the place. And one out of 2 times you see police people standing on the road asking drivers to give them money, and on the other side you see the Amber boys standing on the road and also asking us to give them money. So to save your head, you have to buy your face by giving money to the police and giving money to the Amber boys. So who is responsible for that? Why is the crisis not being resolved? I cannot tell it, but as somebody who is concerned and based in the diaspora and have my family here, I'm not evacuating anybody. All of them are in this country. I will not come here and tell you a lie, Babila.
ASSANGA, Paddy, when you look at what is happening in the 2 regions of the country, in the areas where you visited in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, did you have the impression that things were gradually returning to normalcy?
I will not lie to you. I was not only in the north and southwest regions, but I also traveled up north. I stopped at Betwa, I went to Garwa, I met the pastor of the Presbyterian Church and the pastor of the Baptist Church. We have internally displaced as far as Garwa and Marwa. I had the conversations with them and I asked them what their problems are. But this is the flip side of the coin. They say, this is what I will tell our people, an army cannot win a war against its people. But the flip side of it is this, that the people cannot also win a war against the army. Why am I saying this? Because given the current dispensation of Cameroon's political and military setup, we have 20% Anglophones who are in the army. Who is paying those 20%? It is the dictator, Mr. Biya, who is seated right here in this country. And do you think that those people will turn out against him? No. So we have to look for alternative means. That's why we call ourselves the Alternative Rhetoric Platform.
And what is that alternative means of solving the crisis?
The alternative means of solving the crisis is getting down there what you people, journalists, are doing. Talking to the Amber boys, educating them, and getting that dichotomy, telling them that these lies that come from some of us who are based in the diaspora and some people who are also in the government, because I want to tell you something, Babila, this thing has been infiltrated by the government and some people who know that if this crisis ends, their political career is done. And we are saying that we will go to the truth of it and come onto platforms like yours and tell our people what is the truth and nothing but the truth, undiluted, Babila.
The truth and only the truth, the Bible says, will set you free.
Of course. You know, Babila, I am an Abakwa boy, and I've always promoted this identity of being a true bona fide son of Bamenda. I grew in Bamenda, and I have been to Bali, I have been to Santa, I went to Bafut, and I met the Amber boys. I spoke to them as an Abakwa boy, and you know what Abakwa means. Abakwa is a conglomerate.
What did you tell them?
I told them that the only way that we could get to a feasible solution, because everybody has a right to pick us arms. You can decide today to say that you want to create a cartier in Douala. What do you need to do? Protect your airspace, get all the logistics that is required for it. Nobody refused that. But I told them that for us, and those of us who are politically honest are telling them that it is not feasible, because when Ambazonia was created by Fon Goji Dinka, whom I know very much, whom I was presented to by late Abe Mukong, born in 1997, he told me that this thing is copyrighted. Ambazonia is a copyrighted name which that Goji Dinka has the patentship. That's one thing that our people should know. So we need this education. We need to tell our people the truth and what is feasible and what is achievable. We know we have a dictator, a high-handed dictator like Mr. Biya.
You said their target is not feasible. What are you referring to not being feasible? Secession?
Let me tell you something. Secession or independence is not feasible. Let's evaluate the cost of secession.
What is feasible? Federalism, decentralization?
It is something that we can argue for because it was pleaded for at the floor of the United Nations. Whether Ahijo or Biya, they played their game and torpedoed that thing. You know, you are very connected, Babila, and a very young, brilliant journalist. You heard something about the decentralized or the decolonization thing. That case is closed. Cameroon they will never open a case about Cameroon about colonization. It is over. It is like a judgment that has been passed in court, and when you don't revoke that judgment in time, it is over. So the marriage has been consumed. What do we do about the children that came from a marriage that you don't like? We have to see how the custody will be managed. That is talking in the sense of Molanjo Litumbe. So we have to sit down and say we have been together for 56 years. We have this, we don't have this, we don't have this. How do we go forward? And the AGC is not a dialogue between the government and Cameroon, between the government and Anglophone. It is an initiative that would bring us who think that we are not Ambazonian and not the gun should be talking on our behalf, to sit down with those who think that they should be talking with the guns and dialogue, because whether we like it or not, Babila, it ends on the dialogue table. So we don't want to see our youth, our children being killed on the street, and then they say, my CAC, my commander-in-chief is sitting in the diaspora. No, I am here in Cameroon.
Efforts are still on the way, however, for the AGC that has been postponed twice to hold. Christian Cardinal Tumi told Equinoxe recently during the celebration of Christmas that he may hold early next year.
Yes, before coming to your studio, I met with Christian Cardinal Tumi and the Secretary General, my good friend and your able colleague, Ellie Smith. And we are going to still have a meeting before I take off, but we are bent, those of the alternative rhetoric platforms. I want to use this opportunity to thank people like Metro Alex Bissinger, Dr. Labang, Sheta Kingsley, and all those who have been, you have Nchem Rudolph, Nix Fru. They are people who are pushing this agenda forward, and we are going to push it from the diaspora and make sure that you people at the home front, you are taking the hit. Babila, I know what you are going through as a young journalist. The salaries that you have here are precarious. You don't have good roads. You run all... Tomorrow we can hear that Babila is no more because you are running on bad roads. So the problems you have as a journalist is not the problem that a doctor have. And we have to sit, and you as a journalist represent yourself, not somebody sitting somewhere in the diaspora or somebody sitting in the A2D and signing decrees.
ASSANGA, Paddy, you are a member of the civil society, diaspora activist, political observer. Thanks so much for joining us in this edition of the news on Equinoxe Television.
You're welcome, my brother. Anytime, anyhow, I'll be with you.
Thanks so much, ASSANGA. Paddy, on to something else now. The Minister of Public Health of the Republic of Cameroon has announced that a new hemodialysis center will be established in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala, to solve the problem of inadequate health care offered to persons suffering from kidney failure. He made the announcement yesterday during a working visit to the Lakentini Hospital here in Douala. For me, Armstrong Sanda reports.
At the Douala Lakentini Hospital, patients complain that nurses and medical assistants display an unfriendly behavior towards them. They think most of the nurses are more aggressive than polite.
Par exemple, l'infirmière, quand je lui pose une question, elle me dit attends ceux qui vont venir faire la ronde du soir, parce que moi je suis déjà en train de partir. Elle est même plus pressée que le médecin qui lui, on pourrait le dire, est son chef.
An observation which was equally echoed by Minister Andre Mamafuda of Public Health, who challenged personnel of the health establishment to build a better relationship with patients. He was speaking during the annual meeting of the Douala Lakentini Hospital.
Create this close contact with patients because it's more important for us
The minister also noted achievements recorded by the hospital in 2018. Over 43,000 consultations, about 10,000 emergency cases, and close to 880 live beds were recorded by the hospital in 2018. Satisfied with the figures and the level of renovation works at the hospital, the Minister of Public Health reiterated his support for the Douala Lakintini Hospital and promised the establishment of a new hemodialysis center there in 2019. The annual occasion also presented an opportunity for some retired workers of the hospital to be honored.
And we wrap up this newscast in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the presidential election due for Sunday has been postponed in 3 areas, and electoral officials in the country say the postponement has been triggered by insecurity and an Ebola outbreak. The opposition are crying foul, saying that the authorities in place are planning on masterminding to maintain Joseph Kabila in power. They consider the postponement as a strategy to rig the election, considering that most of the places where the election has been postponed are strongholds of the opposition. That's it for this edition of the 6 p.m. news on Equinoxe Television. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. Goodbye.